Hey guys, tonight we step into the glistening cobbled streets of 1750s London, a place where the fog rolls thick, the rain is relentless, and your fellow pedestrians might throw an onion at your head if you're carrying the wrong accessory. Specifically, an umbrella? Yep, that innocent collapsible canopy you probably keep in your car or lose at cafes was once seen as a social outrage. Picture this: horse, drawn carriages splashing muddy water as they rattle past, chimney smoke curling into the gray sky, and vendors hollering over the slap of wet feet on stone. You push your way down Fleet Street in a damp wool coat, sidestepping beggars, dung heaps, and fishmongers. But not a single soul in sight is holding an umbrella. Weird, right? You're in a city famous for drizzle, and yet everyone's just accepting it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and the local time. I'm always curious where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're soaked to the bone. And while you'd love to pop open your trusty umbrella, you hesitate. Because in Georgian England, that's not just a fashion choice. It's a statement, and not a welcome one. The idea of shielding yourself from rain, especially as a man, is seen as soft, almost suspicious. Rain is nature's test of grit, a gentleman braving a downpour with a stiff upper lip and dripping sideburns. That's respectable. But an umbrella? That's French. And no one wants to be French right now. Not that the umbrella is new. It's been around since ancient times. Egypt had sunshades, China had waterproof oil paper ones, but in England, the umbrella's return voyage came via Persia and the continent, where it was more about blocking sun than water. Somehow, during its oceanic journey and cultural recalibration, it picked up all sorts of baggage of foreignness, frivolity, even femininity. As you wander past a cluster of coffeehouse philosophers, arguing over Newton's latest ideas, a liveried man in a powdered wig eyes your still, folded umbrella with open disdain. You nod politely and keep walking. Inside your coat, your fingers itch against the handle. Maybe later. Maybe in a quieter alley. It's not just peer pressure. It's actual risk. People have been pelted with cabbage leaves and animal waste for flaunting an umbrella. They've been shouted down in pubs. One poor chap, legend has it, got knocked unconscious with a church pew leg by an angry coachman. Why? For using what the man called a roof on a stick. Here's the thing. Umbrellas threaten an entire street economy. If it's raining, you'd normally hire a coach or sedan chair to get around without getting drenched. That's money in the pocket of drivers, footmen, and porters. But if people start shielding themselves, that's lost income. And economic sabotage, no matter how polite, tends to rile people up. Still, you notice a few brave souls using umbrellas. Mostly foreign diplomats. A tall Italian near the theater district carries a crimson one lined with gold fringe. People stare. A cluster of boys throw mud. The Italian just smiles and ducks inside the opera house, dry as a bone. Historians still argue whether this umbrella taboo was truly universal. You overhear one scholar mumble to another over a chessboard. Or just confined to the fashionable classes of central London. His opponent grunts and moves a rook. Either way, it shows how something so banal can be socially explosive. You round a corner and finally let your umbrella breathe. It snaps open with a delightful click. The world hushes under its canopy. Rain patters like a sleepy lullaby. And for a moment, you feel invincible. Then a tomato hits your shoe. A group of boys jeer from across the road. Oi! Look at Lord Dandy with his rain hat! Fancy keeping your curls dry, my lord? You lower the umbrella. Sigh. Maybe not yet. Still, something's shifting in the air. You can feel it. Even among the jeers, there's a spark of curiosity. A woman glances twice. A shopkeeper lingers at the door. The umbrella is still weird, but no longer unimaginable. Give it a few decades. Give it one eccentric trailblazer. And maybe Just maybe you won't have to walk around soaked like a half-drowned spaniel just to prove you're respectable. But for now, you tuck the umbrella under your arm, shake off the tomato juice, and stride off toward Cheapside, dodging another puddle. The rain shows no sign of stopping, and you're starting to wonder, what kind of man would be stubborn enough to openly, defiantly use one of these things in public? You're about to find out. You head east, deeper into the rhythmic, rain, slick chaos of Georgian London. The streets hum with the clatter of hooves and the low grumble of sodden crowds. A wrinkled umbrella handle peeks from your coat like contraband. Around you, no one else seems to mind the drizzle streaming down their faces. In fact, many look vaguely proud of it, chin up, hat brims dripping, silk stockings turning to paste. Wetness is a badge of honor. Here's the thing. In 18th century England, real men face the weather. You're not supposed to avoid it. You're supposed to conquer it, stoically, silently, while your wig turns into a sad tangle of wool spaghetti. Carrying an umbrella, especially as a man, signals that you care about comfort, that you value your health, that you'd rather stay dry than perform public masculinity. Scandalous. As you pass a row of clubhouses, the kind with names like the Society of Snuff and Gentle Virtue, you catch snippets of conversation. Little French parasol. Doesn't even own a hat. Probably bathes, too. There's a simmering contempt for people who pamper themselves. And umbrellas? They're the perfect scapegoat. This cultural disdain runs deep. Picture paintings from the era, men with stern profiles, stormy skies, and absolutely no rain protection. Writers, too, were in on it. A satirical poem from the time reads, "For what is man, if not a beastia, when 'neath a tent he walks the street? A beast indeed, one with dry breeches." Part of it was a national identity thing. England had an empire to maintain, colonies to scowl at, and a self-image built on stoicism. If you couldn't weather a little storm, how could you command a fleet or colonize Barbados? Umbrellas looked suspiciously like cowardice. Or worse, like fashion. Women, on the other hand, had their parasols. Acceptable, dainty, usually meant to block the sun. Rain!
That was unladylike.
You, a man, trying to protect yourself from the elements with something vaguely French and frilly. That didn't just cross a line. It tangoed over it in silk stockings and whispered bonjour. A curious historical footnote around this time, some gentlemen actually preferred getting ill over carrying an umbrella. Seriously. Letters from the era mention men catching pneumonia with what reads like a touch of pride. One even brags about being brought low by gallant rain. Which, honestly, sounds like a bad name for a perfume. Historians still argue whether this resistance to umbrellas stemmed purely from machismo. One elderly bookseller tells you, dusting off a leather-bound almanac, or whether it was also a deeper resentment of continental fashion invading the English soul. Either way, the outcome was the same: umbrellas were ridiculed, ignored, or angrily stomped into the gutter. Still, not everyone hated them. Among the city's eccentrics, a few outliers existed: eccentric surgeons, painters with foreign wives, and men who traveled. If you'd spent time in Paris or Lisbon, you might come home with one. You'd also come home with stories of being chased by small children and mistaken for a walking pavilion. There's even a fringe theory, whispered only in obscure university circles, that some men used umbrellas precisely because it annoyed people. Like a powdered, wigged troll, these rebels weren't trying to stay dry, they were making a statement. You pass one such man now, tall, swaggering, and holding a floral print canopy over a velvet coat. His expression dares you to comment. You don't. You just nod. As you duck into a bakery to escape the drizzle, the smell of hot yeast and treacle wafts over you. A woman behind the counter eyes your umbrella. "Not from round here, are you?" she says. Not unkindly. You shake your head. "Just visiting." She smirks. "Don't worry. They'll all be using M in 20 years. Or dead." You laugh. But she's not entirely wrong. London is changing. Slowly, stubbornly, soakedly. You leave the shop and continue your stroll. The sky opens again, as if offended by your snack break. Rain lashes the rooftops. Still, the men around you remain hat only, brows furrowed, coats clinging to skin. You blend in, walking umbrella, closed, drenched, but socially acceptable. Then you see him. A man in his 40s, walking upright down Oxford Street, wielding an open umbrella like a sword of moral defiance. It's black utilitarian, without lace or frill, and yet it radiates rebellion. People hiss. Someone calls him Mad Hanway. He doesn't flinch. You follow at a distance, intrigue. Little do you know, you've just witnessed a legend. A man who will quite literally change the forecast of fashion by refusing to care if people hate his brawly. But that's for tomorrow. Tonight, you just watch him fade into the drizzle, a lone dome bobbing through a sea of soggy scorn. He walks with a stiff spine and a determination that almost dares the heavens to rain harder. And they oblige. The skies over Oxford Street, never ones for subtlety, crack open again. Rain pelts down with renewed spite. But Jonas Hanway, he marches on, dry beneath his black umbrella, entirely unbothered by the wet chaos around him. You trail behind, dodging carriages and irate pedestrians, your own umbrella still tightly furled like a secret. Something about this man draws attention, and not the good kind. A bootblack mutters, "Here comes the parlor peacock." A pie vendor hurls a clump of mashed turnip in his direction. Hanway doesn't flinch. Born in 1712, Jonas Hanway wasn't always this controversial. In fact, he spent much of his early life adventuring, sailing to Persia, narrowly avoiding pirates, losing money in failed shipping deals. He wore many hats, but none as infamous as the invisible one people tried to bash off his head. Every time he used an umbrella, when he returned to London from abroad, Hanway brought with him not only tales of exotic ports and camel caravans, but also new habits. Among them, a deep affection for umbrellas. Not parasols, not rain hoods. Umbrellas. Rain shields. Functional, blunt, and entirely too French for the average Londoner's taste. But Hanway wasn't average. He had that blend of eccentricity and stubbornness that history remembers. He also believed in being dry. Passionately. And so, in an age when a gentleman was expected to accept rain like he accepted taxes, miserably, but stoically, Hanway strutted through showers with his protective canopy aloft. Did not go unnoticed. You follow him to a tea house where he stops to shake the rain off his umbrella with a genteel flick. People scowl. A child whispers, "That's the man Mama said not to point at." Inside, over lukewarm tea and 2 dry biscuits, you overhear murmurs. As not a proper Englishman. Probably writes with his left hand too. One woman leans close and whispers, "They say he lectures chimney sweeps on manners." To be fair, he kinda did. Hanway wasn't just an umbrella fanatic. He was a do-gooder of the most exhausting kind. He railed against tea drinking, despite drinking gallons of it himself, scolded children in the streets, and published tracts with titles like "Virtue in the Rains," "A Man's Shield Against Vice." Okay, that one's made up, but only barely. He also wrote actual essays defending umbrella use. In one, he argued that no moral man should willingly endure sogginess of the shoulders. In another, he claimed that umbrellas preserved dignity and prevented rheumatism. Fringe for the time, sure, but give it a few decades and boom, science. Still, public opinion wasn't on his side. Historians still argue whether Hanway's stubborn use of the umbrella was a calculated public statement or simply a matter of personal comfort. Either way, his persistence paid off, gradually, painfully. But undeniably, you watch him finish his tea, pat his coat dry, and step back into the drizzle. A woman scoffs.
A man shouts, "You're not in Turkey now, sir!"
Hanway merely lifts his chin and continues, black dumb shielding him like a knight's helm. There's something bizarrely heroic about it. You wonder how many times he's been harassed, tripped, mocked in pamphlets and political cartoons. Spoiler, a lot, and yet, here he is. still walking, still dry. Later that evening, in a modest drawing room in Bloomsbury, you hear more. A clerk tells you Hanway was the first man to use an umbrella regularly in London. Everyone said he looked ridiculous. A maid adds, they also said he was a warlock, or maybe French, which to them was sort of the same thing. And yet, slowly, one damp stroll at a time, Hanway's persistence made umbrellas just a little less weird, a little less foreign. People started talking less about the umbrella and more about other things, like the weather itself. An odd quirk: the more Hanway used his umbrella, the more Londoners seemed to notice how often it actually rained. Which sounds obvious now, but back then, it was simply endured. Hanway, in a strange way, gave people permission to complain, and then eventually to adapt. As you walk home through puddles, your own umbrella still hidden beneath your coat, you can't help but feel a touch of admiration. Hanway didn't start a revolution with fire or swords. He did it with fabric, metal ribs, and a complete unwillingness to get rained on. And tomorrow, you just might open yours. You wake to the soft rattle of rain against the window, a sound that by now feels like the heartbeat of Georgian London. Streets glisten with fresh puddles, roofs run with muddy streaks, and well, you're hesitating again. Your umbrella leans by the door like a loyal but controversial friend. You glance at it, then out the window, then back. Sigh. Fine. You grab it. Today, you're determined. If Jonas Hanway can parade around with one of these in the face of ridicule and turnip attacks, so can you. Probably. You step outside. The sky greets you like a wet slap. You unfurl the umbrella, and all at once, it's like the universe pauses. Heads turn. You've made a mistake. You barely make it 2 blocks before the jeers begin. What's this? A new pope. A butcher calls, cleaver still in hand.
Hide your wigs, lads!
The French are invading? Chimes a fishwife, flinging something that may have once been a haddock. You try to walk faster, but Georgian London streets aren't designed for discretion. They're crowded, narrow, and full of people just itching to express their feelings about your umbrella. One man spits. Another tries to poke a hole in the fabric with his cane. Someone offers to fix your little tent problem permanently. And then there's the trash. It starts with bread crusts, then a moldy apple, then, inexplicably, a turnip. You're not even near a market. The umbrella holds up admirably, but your pride takes a few hits. A woman glares and mutters something about men these days. You duck into a doorway, trying to gather yourself. Your heart is racing. Your socks are still wet, but the rest of you is gloriously dry, which, annoyingly, makes people hate you more. Being dry is seen as smug. It's not just about the umbrella. It's what it represents: softness, foreignness, change. And in Georgian England, change is rarely met with applause, unless it involves naval victories or better marmalade. Historians still argue whether umbrella users were more likely to be political radicals. You hear someone say as they pass, probably not, but in a time when conformity meant survival, standing out, even slightly, was risky. You try walking again, this time hugging the edge of buildings, sticking to quieter alleys. But even there, someone shouts, "Where's your bonnet, Milady?" You glance down. You're in perfectly normal trousers and boots. It doesn't matter. The umbrella has feminized you by default. Frustrated, you duck into a pub. The dripping boot, according to the swinging wooden sign. Inside, it's all warm all, pipe smoke, and the smell of wet dog. You shake off the umbrella and tuck it discreetly under a bench. The bartender eyes you. "Don't bring that thing round here," he says, not looking up from his tankard. Frights the regulars. You nod. Understood. In the corner, 2 old men are arguing over whether umbrellas cause gout. One insists that trapping moisture near your head leads to brain damp. The other counters that it's actually the devil trying to block God's natural punishment from reaching the sinful. You sip your drink, quietly marveling at how deeply umbrellas have managed to offend everyone. You also realize you're not alone. There's another one leaning under a chair by the fire, battered, rusted, half collapsed, but definitely an umbrella. Its owner, a young woman reading a newspaper, catches your glance and gives the smallest of nods. Progress. Very small, very soggy progress. You leave the pub to a slightly lighter rain, your resolve hardening. Maybe you will carry the umbrella again. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week. But soon. After all, Hanway did it for decades. He faced worse insults, more aggressive vegetables. And he never stopped. As you walk, you pass a line of shops. In one window, a sign reads, "Imported French sun covers now rainproof." Behind it, a display of frilly, impractical parasols. You shake your head. Close, but no cigar. Still, something's shifting. Maybe it's in your mind, maybe in the city, but there's a sense that umbrellas are slowly crawling out of ridicule and into reluctant curiosity. Not admiration. Not yet. But curiosity. You duck into a bookstore and browse a pamphlet titled "The Dangers of Being Too Dry." The author, writing under the pseudonym A Real Man, warns that umbrellas can cause moral rot, spinal laziness, and, somehow, insomnia. It's laughable. But people are buying it. Literally. Later, back in your lodging, you clean tomato pulp from your boots and hang the umbrella to dry. It's earned a rest. So have you. It may not feel like a victory, but it is. You used an umbrella. In public, in London. And you survived. Mostly. The next morning, sunlight teases the rooftops. But it's a trap. Within half an hour, clouds lumber back over the skyline like sulking mastiffs, and the drizzle resumes its usual performance. By now, you're starting to see it less as a nuisance and more like a persistent house-a-guest. It's just always there. Still, you hesitate again with the umbrella. Yesterday was educational. You want to stay dry, yes, but you also don't want to be the accidental subject of a future tavern ballad titled "The Fool," with the roof stick. Yet curiosity, that wonderful gremlin, wins out. You carry it under your arm and head for Covent Garden. What you quickly learn is this: the people who hate umbrellas the most. London's coachmen. Oh, the coachmen. Those stout, sharp-tongued sentinels of street transit. Most work for hire, ferrying wet and weary passengers in creaky black carriages. And for them, rain equals business. If the skies open up, people pay for cover. Every drop is coin. So when folks start strolling around with their own portable roofs, well, that's personal. You stand under an awning, watching a coachman near the market square spot a man with an umbrella, and bellow.
Oi!
You walking in, sir, starting a parade? It's not just heckling. Some coachmen actively try to sabotage umbrella users. There's talk of them splashing puddles, extra hard near pedestrians who dare walk dry. You believe it too, because a few minutes later, a man just ahead of you gets absolutely obliterated by a tidal wave of gutter water. The umbrella survives, his dignity. Less so. And it's not just spontaneous acts of petty vengeance. Some coachmen form informal pacts, the so-called Whipman's Block. An unofficial gang of angry drivers is known to follow umbrella users, jeer them loudly, and in one case, reportedly try to run someone off the road. The victim's only crime, using a canvas canopy near Temple Bar. Historians still argue whether these hostilities were organic or orchestrated. Says a man selling pickled eggs, who clearly eavesdrops on a lot of lectures, but most agree it was about money and pride. Mostly money, though. You nod. It makes sense. Every umbrella in use meant fewer soaked passengers. Fewer soaked passengers meant lighter pockets. In a time without job protections or unions, even minor shifts in habit could spell financial disaster. You walk past a row of parked carriages. One driver spits in the street and glares at your umbrella. Hope your little tent blows away, he mutters. You give a friendly nod and keep walking, your grip tightening slightly. Strange. The umbrella, a device that now comes free with magazine subscriptions, once inspired public fury, economic panic, and actual conspiracy theories. Some pamphlets from the 1760s claimed umbrellas caused infertility in men and witchcraft in women. Yes, both. somehow. A curious fringe detail. Certain taverns had signs forbidding umbrella users from entering. No pets, no musicians, no umbrellas. Makes sense. It was a social cue. One step away from walking in with a French accent and a pocket square. You step inside a print shop on the Strand. It smells of ink and candle wax. There, pinned to the wall, is a woodcut cartoon of a coachman tripping a man with an umbrella. The caption reads, "Dry today, dead tomorrow." Subtle. Even theater plays join in. One farce you hear about features a character named Lord Umbrellington, who faints whenever it rains. Another comedic bit includes a coachman, accidentally, reversing over a man's umbrella while shouting about defending British values. And yet, for all the abuse, umbrellas aren't going away. They're increasing, slowly, among the brave and eccentric. The trickle becomes a drip. Not a downpour yet, but enough to be noticed. You duck into an alley to avoid another water, splash ambush, and find two young boys fencing with old umbrella frames. One of them shouts, "On guard, dry bones," before collapsing in laughter. In a strange way, mockery often signals the beginning of acceptance. People stop ignoring or attacking something and start joking about it. It's not respect, but it's not pure hatred either. It's a shift. By the time you reach home, a coachman throws a soggy cabbage leaf at your feet and mutters, "Won't last." None of you do. You smile. He's wrong. He just doesn't know it yet. You decide to shift your focus, just for today. Enough about soggy scorn and cabbage-based hostility. You want to know, what about the ladies? Because while men like Jonas Hanway are being pelted for their umbrellas, you've noticed something strange. Women carry them. Well, parasols technically. Lightweight, pastel, often lacy. You spot them everywhere on clear days. Protecting delicate complexions, shielding fashionable bonnets, and fluttering with elegance down Bond Street. They're not for rain. That would be absurd. That would be French. Still, there's a contradiction here that begs exploration. Why is one kind of umbrella socially acceptable, and the other an affront to all things manly and British? You follow a pair of young women, sisters maybe, as they stroll along the perimeter of St. James's Park. One holds a peach-colored parasol, the other twirls a fan. They laugh gently, sidestepping puddles, entirely unbothered by the gray sky. You overhear snippets of conversation, gossip about someone's secret elopement, a butcher with suspiciously nice handwriting, and the scandal of a woman named Clarissa who allegedly used her parasol in the rain. One sister whispers, "She's practically a man now." Giggles ensue. The idea of female umbrella use in rain is a quiet rebellion. Parasols are expected, but only under the sun. The second it turns practical, protecting from water instead of tanning rays, it becomes slightly improper. Not as offensive as a man doing it, but still a breach of decorum. You pass a millinery shop. In the window are rows of frilled parasols, labeled Summer Elegance. Beside them, tucked awkwardly in a corner, is one drab rain umbrella with the label Inclement Necessity. Inquire within. Translation: we sell these, but please don't ask too loudly. Inside, you meet the owner, a sharp-eyed woman named Miss Ridley. She adjusts her pince, and says, "I carry umbrellas for practical women. Foreign nannies, governesses, travelers, ladies who need to be dry more than they need to be adored." You ask if she sells many. Miss Ridley smirks. "Enough, but only to those who don't mind," whispers. She shows you a curious hybrid, a parasol reinforced for drizzle. Still decorative, but lined with oiled silk, it feels like the kind of thing a spy might carry. Pretty on the outside, deadly to social expectations underneath. Which brings you to an odd fringe detail, umbrellas as espionage tools. You learn of a tale, probably apocryphal, about a Prussian courtesan using a hollow umbrella to smuggle documents out of Hanover. Another rumor speaks of an English lady hiding coded letters in the ribs of her rain parasol. Historians still argue whether women played a key role in normalizing the umbrella. Miss Ridley says thoughtfully, "Not by leading parades, but by making the thing less alien, less scandalous, one flutter at a time. You leave with one of her reinforced parasols. She insists you take it, in case you ever need to blend in with the clever sort. On the way back to your lodgings, you notice the quiet competence with which working women use umbrellas, not gentry. Maids, vendors, wet nurses. These are the ones who can't afford to get sick from rain, who have no time for scandal, and no patience for fashion-based weather exposure. One laundress crosses the street with a patched black umbrella that looks older than King George. She ignores the stares. Another woman balances a basket on her head while holding a worn umbrella in one hand and 3 squirming toddlers in the other. No jeers for them, just wary respect. And then there are the upper-class rebels. You pass an open-air cafe where a fashionable lady sits with a cup of chocolate and, gasp, a man-sized rain umbrella propped beside her. Her companions laugh nervously, as if uncertain whether to praise or pity her. She meets your eye, winks. You're not sure whether to applaud or run, but you're sure of one thing now: umbrella resistance isn't just a man's story. Women are pushing boundaries too. Quietly, strategically, and often with better taste. By nightfall, the rain thins to a mist. Your streets glisten. You pass a pair of governesses walking home. One uses her parasol like a sword, batting away low branches. The other carries an umbrella, plain and proud. No one throws anything. Maybe the city's softening. Maybe it's just tired. Either way, the ladies aren't waiting for permission. You're halfway to Fleet Street when you hear a metallic snap, followed by a very British string of muttered curses. You turn the corner and find him, hunched, greasy-haired, shoulders draped in oil-streaked tweed. Beside him, an umbrella lies in pieces, looking like it just lost a bar fight with gravity. The man doesn't notice you at first. He's too busy trying to stuff the ribs of the broken umbrella back into its collapsed shaft, all while balancing a cup of cold tea on one knee and humming what might be the national anthem, or possibly just a dirge. Trouble? You ask, gently. He looks up. Only with the laws of physics, the inconsistency of brass alloys, and the unforgivable dampness of this blasted hemisphere. Otherwise, quite cheery. You've met a type like him before. The alleyway inventor. The unpaid genius. The sort of man who might genuinely believe he can improve the umbrella if only society would get out of his way. His name is Osbert. No surname offered, which feels intentional. He gestures for you to come closer, already launching into a detailed monologue on cantilevers, collapsibility, and his tragic lack of sponsors. See this hinge, he says, pointing to a tiny mechanism with the enthusiasm of someone revealing buried treasure, supposed to allow the ribs to retract without snapping. But in wet weather, it seizes. Dreadfully ironic for a rain-shielding device. You ask how long he's been working on it. 5 years. Or 7, depending how one defines failure. He rummages through a canvas sack and produces sketches, prototypes, and something that looks like a metal spider having a panic attack. There are levers, springs, even one with a crank handle that collapses with the violence of a bear trap. Historians still argue whether tinkerers like Osbert ever contributed meaningfully to umbrella innovation. He says with a wink, I argue that I've contributed to entropy if nothing else. You spend the next hour in his company, learning more than you ever thought possible about the tension ratios of umbrella ribs and the tensile memory of spring steel. Every few minutes, he pauses to sip cold tea and glare at the sky as if personally offended by clouds. He tells you of a failed patent attempt, blocked, he claims, by umbrella cartels. He says the Royal Society laughed at his collapsible model. Not with mirth. He clarifies. At me. But beneath the bitterness, there's pride. A strange, stubborn pride. He shows you his earliest design made from salvaged baleen, brass hinges, and repurposed corset wire. It opened once, then caught fire. Still, progress? You ask him why he keeps at it. Osbert shrugs. Because umbrellas shouldn't be ridiculous. They should work. Quietly, dependably, and without the threat of spontaneous decapitation. He hands you a compact model. Rough around the edges, but surprisingly light. Take it. Field testing. Tell me if it folds without severing anything. You accept? Carefully. Walking away, you feel oddly buoyed. Osbert's designs are wonky, sure, but he's part of the shift. For every scowling coachman and laughing pamphleteer, there's someone like him. In the background. Building. Fixing. Tinkering. Later, at a street corner, you try the prototype. It opens with a musical click. Rain taps against the canvas. It holds. A woman nearby raises an eyebrow. You brace for a comment. Instead, she just nods and says, "That one folds better than mine." Progress. You wake to a cacophony. Not church bells. Not market traders. Something stranger. Thunk. Snap. Wheeze clack. It's coming from the alley behind your lodging. You peek through a cracked shutter and spot Osbert again. Hair madder than ever. Coat somehow more threadbare. Surrounded by what looks like an umbrella graveyard. Metal arms poke out of crates. Fabric scraps flutter from gutters. One experimental unit appears to be stuck halfway open, like a mechanical flower having second thoughts. You dress quickly, curiosity overriding common sense, and tiptoe outside. Osbert spots you instantly. "Ah, my field operative returns!" I trust the rib pivot didn't shear off mid-gust. You shake your head. Worked fine. Tragic. Then it needs improving. Today, Osbert is test launching folding umbrellas. Not the smooth, whisper, quiet kind you'd see in a travel shop. No. These fold with the drama of a Victorian feint. Some pop open with the speed of a slapstick boxing glove. Others jam halfway, emitting an ominous click before retracting with embarrassing limpness. Still, he's onto something. A few designs almost work. He explains, portability is the next frontier. Men are less hostile when the umbrella isn't flaunting itself like a parasol. Hide it in a walking stick, and suddenly it's just clever. You help him sort pieces, springs, hinges, cords. The smell of machine oil clings to your fingers. Osbert mutters about a competitor, some clockmaker in Bristol, who allegedly weaponized the folding mechanism. You don't ask. Historians still argue whether folding umbrellas were a British invention or imported from the East. Osbert says, like he's narrating a footnote, but I say if mine explodes less than the last batch, I win. He hands you one of his better models. Black silk, brass stem, a folding mechanism that clicks instead of screams. Take her for a spin, he says, not quite joking. You do, and it works, mostly. A bit stiff, slight delay on the fold. But compared to his earlier designs, it's a masterpiece. People stare less today. Maybe they're used to you. Maybe it's the umbrella's sleeker design. Maybe the drizzle has finally broken them down. You pass a flower seller who simply nods, as if to say, "You again." Fine. Then you see it. One of Osbert's folding umbrellas being sold in a side stall, not by Osbert. You look closer. It's the same rib layout, the same brass grip. The vendor catches your eye. French import? He lies smoothly. Folds up nice? Nothing like that Jonas Hanway nonsense. You almost laugh. Osbert would combust. When you return to the alley, Osbert is mid. Experiment with a prototype that fires open with a slingshot motion. It hits a chimney. No injuries, unless you count pride. You tell him what you saw. He frowns. Typical. They laugh until it works. Then it's foreign genius. Never mind the Englishman who lost 2 fingers perfecting the mechanism. You offer him a pent. He declines. Backlash is part of progress. He mutters. Just means they're noticing. Later that evening, as gaslights flicker and the rain returns, you stroll with Osbert's umbrella in hand. It folds neatly when the clouds break, unfolds with dignity when the rain resumes. No explosions. No cabbage ambushes. Just practicality. It's still early days. Most umbrellas are bulky, awkward, prone to sudden collapse. But the idea is growing. People want convenience. They want comfort, even if they won't admit it out loud yet. You pass a group of students outside a coffee house. One of them carries a folding umbrella under his arm. Another laughs, but it's a half-hearted thing. The first just shrugs. It's clever, he says. It is. You find yourself drawn to church bells today, not by faith, necessarily, but by curiosity. Word on the cobbled street is that some parishes are cracking down on umbrellas, of all things. You're not sure whether to expect a sermon or a stoning. You arrive at a squat stone chapel just as bells toll the hour. The sky is gray, per usual, but holds its rain for now. Outside, you spot a sign hastily nailed to the church gate. No u umbrellas ein sitiro y the lower p ro ovidus kuvarang gh. You read it twice. Inside, the pews creak beneath damp wool and whispered piety. You slip into the back row, umbrella tucked respectfully at your feet. Still, a woman 3 benches over glares at it as though it just insulted the Book of Psalms. The priest enters. Robes slightly wet, expression entirely dry. He begins with a reading, then pivots, without warning, into his chosen theme. And, as Noah trusted the ark, so must we trust the Lord in storms.
Not in canopies of pride.
You suppress a groan. A few heads nod. A man mutters, Amen, probably out of habit. The message is clear. Umbrellas are not just foreign, not just fussy. They are faithless. The priest continues, do not be among the dry-headed doubters who carry their own roof against heaven's will. He doesn't point at you, exactly, but your umbrella feels heavier somehow. Afterward, in the churchyard, you linger near a pair of old women discussing the sermon. Prideful little things, one says. Those umbrellas? As if we know better than God when it rains. Her companion snorts. Or better than my knees. I'd rather keep dry, thunder or no. That's the thing. The pushback isn't universal. There's quiet disagreement. Some parishioners think umbrellas are vain. Others think wet hair is worse. You pass another church, this one with an actual ban posted at the entrance. Umbrellas to remain outside. By order. Several are stacked beside the door, dripping gently. One has been stolen. Another peed on by a dog. A woman in her Sunday best lifts her skirts and says, vanity tools of the devil, they say. I say, better the devil than pneumonia. You start to notice a pattern. The more religiously traditional the area, the more resistance there is to umbrellas. And it's not always about the item itself. It's the symbolism. They imply control. Autonomy. A refusal to submit to discomfort. Historians still argue whether this theological distaste was genuine belief or performative righteousness. You overhear a street preacher explain to no one in particular. I say the Lord invented umbrellas. He just outsourced them to China. You chuckle. A few people nearby don't. Back at the chapel gate, a boy offers to hold umbrellas during service for a fee. 2 pence, dry guarantee. 4 pence, I won't open them for fun. You admire the hustle. The church isn't alone in its disapproval. Some rural districts you pass through on a later day have full-on umbrella bans at public gatherings. Maypole festivals, village fairs. No parasols, no rain shields, no Frenchy foolishness. You hear about one rector who allegedly tried to exorcise a particularly large umbrella during a baptism. It's probably not true, but the fact that it might be says a lot. Still, none of it stops the march. People want to stay dry. Quietly. Slowly. A few umbrellas sneak into back pews. A few churchgoers brave the judgment. After all, what's more biblical than shelter in a storm? You leave the churchyard, just as the rain returns. A man in front of you hesitates, then opens his umbrella with a quiet defiance. No one shouts. No one gasps. Even in church, progress is seeping in. The next day dawns soggy, naturally. You trudge through Hyde Park, boots squelching, mist clinging to the trees like a hangover from the sky. It's peaceful, almost until a commotion breaks the calm. Raised voices. Shouts. The unmistakable rustle of agitated silk. You follow the noise, curiosity picked. There, just beyond the Serpentine, 2 men are facing off in a most British standoff. No pistols, no sabers. Just one very offended aristocrat and another man holding, yes, a black umbrella. The umbrella man, older and lean, appears quite dry. The other, soaked but steaming with indignation, clutches a cane with white-knuckled fury. You arrive just in time to catch the heart of the dispute. He refused to close it while I passed. The wet man growls.
As though I were of no consequence!
I was keeping dry. The other says flatly. Rain does not pause for your ego. And there it is. A bystander mutters. It's a matter of honor now. Another nods solemnly. Umbrella etiquette is still unwritten. Dangerous territory. Apparently, this entire spat began when one man didn't tilt his umbrella away as the other passed. A perceived slight. An unacknowledged deference. And in Georgian England, even that could escalate. Someone produces a glove. You blink. They're not seriously. Oh yes, says a vendor cheerfully. Umbrella duels are rare, but not unheard of. Within minutes, a small crowd has gathered. The challenger, Lord Featherstone, you learn, insists that dignity demands satisfaction. The accused, one Mr. Ellery, reluctantly agrees, but requests an alternate weapon, umbrellas. Historians still argue whether any actual duels were fought with umbrellas, says a bookish fellow beside you licking jam from his thumb. But there are at least 2 pamphlets referencing them. One satirical, one less so. Today it's happening for real. The second's layout rules 2 paces apart. Open umbrellas. First to lose grip, take a blow to the head, or fall in a puddle concedes. No fatal blows. No spikes. No designs with hidden blades, a surprising clarification. They square off and begin. It's not graceful. More like 2 giant bats flailing in a windstorm. The umbrellas collide with a wet thwomp, slide off each other, then snap open again. Featherstone lunges, misses, and slips in the mud. Ellery jabs, score. The crowd gasps. Featherstone's powdered wig goes flying. He rises, drenched and irate.
You struck my person!
Ellery bows. Your person was in the way. They go again. This time both umbrellas collapse mid-swing, reducing the bout to a wet, wrestling match punctuated by polite coughing. Eventually, they're pulled apart, breathless and filthy, but no longer fighting. Somehow, the absurdity of it all has drained the venom. Featherstone offers a soggy handshake. Ellery accepts. The crowd disperses, chuckling. Someone claps. You notice a few spectators, now carrying umbrellas of their own. Tightly shut, but visible. Later, at a coffee house, you hear a dramatized retelling. They dueled like Greek heroes, says one poet. Only wetter. Someone's already sketching a cartoon. You predict it'll be in tomorrow's broadsheets under a headline like Drizzlegate Honor and Moisture Collide. What's fascinating is not the duel itself, but the shift it represents. Umbrellas are no longer only objects of ridicule. Now they're tools of conflict, symbols, points of pride, ridiculous, yes, but also taken seriously. You walk home beneath your own umbrella, which now feels a little weightier with significance. Rain falls steady and soft. For the first time, no one heckles you. No cabbies shout. Even the fishmongers ignore you. That's something. Maybe it takes absurdity to reset the rules. Maybe society needs a jewel in the mud to realize it's been raining for a century, and no one's built a roof. One umbrella at a time, the world is changing. The morning after the great Hyde Park umbrella duel, the city is electric with gossip. From Covent Garden to Camden, everyone has an opinion, and none of them agree. Was it heroic? Hysterical. Did Featherstone truly get a rib to the ear? Or was that embellishment from the man selling Honor in the Rain, broadsides outside Charing Cross? You decide to see for yourself how the public is processing it all. Spoiler badly, but amusingly. Your first stop is a bookseller near the Strand. In the window, next to sermons and cookbooks, is a stack of fresh pamphlets titled Umbrellaed and Unbowed. The Parkside Provocation. The cover illustration shows 2 men mid-clash, umbrellas aloft like swords, both faces exaggerated in a bug-eyed rage. Inside, the owner, Mr. Greaves, sighs. Sold out twice already, he says, barely looking up. If only people cared this much about Locke. The pamphlet's tone swings between scandalous and sarcastic. Ellery is dubbed the Parapluie Paladin. Featherstone, Lord Dampenington. The author quotes imaginary diary entries, makes wild claims about secret umbrella fencing schools, and ends with a dramatic call to arm thyself with canvas and courage. As you exit, you catch children reenacting the duel with sticks and buckets. One shouts, "You dare insult my dryness. Prepare to be shielded?" Before whacking his friend over the head. You walk through Piccadilly, where a caricature artist has set up a stall. His sketches show umbrellas with legs, umbrellas on horses, umbrellas parachuting over the city. One features an umbrella leading a crowd of soaking wet people like some sort of soggy messiah. He sees you and grins. Want one drawn of you. I can make your brawly breathe fire. Tempting. But no. Even street performers are getting in on it. A puppet show you pass features a parody called The Battle of the Brawlies, where two stringed marionettes argue over the last dry spot on a bench. The show ends with both being struck by lightning and sharing the umbrella in the afterlife. The umbrella has officially entered the realm of entertainment. Historians still argue whether this explosion of satire helped or hindered umbrella acceptance. Notes a pamphlet, reading passerby, near St. Paul's, but it definitely made them unforgettable. You spot a few early adopters too. Younger men, mostly. Some carry umbrellas confidently, others like they're expecting an ambush. A woman with a brooch shaped like an umbrella winks as she passes. You duck into a tavern for lunch and notice the specials board reads Todewas OFFERNGS umbrella roast, a dry aged drizzle ales served under covert, Featherstone's folly pie, slightly salty. The barkeep laughs when you order. Used to be you couldn't bring an umbrella in here. Now they're hanging them on the coat rack like top hats. It's still not fully normal. A few glares persist. A few mutters. But the tone has shifted from hostile to hilariously begrudging. The ridicule has moved from user to object. From "you're soft" to "that thing's daft." It's not approval, not yet. But it's a new phase. Mockery by normalization. You walk home, rain splattering softly overhead, and you hum a tune you overheard from a street singer. It goes like this. He came with his brawly, so proud and so dry. The cabbage flew past him. He barely said, "Why?" You grin. Catchy. That's the funny thing about ridicule. It's often the last gasp of resistance before acceptance. And now, umbrellas are everywhere. In jokes, in songs, in shop windows. They've become part of the city's noisy, rain-washed personality. You pass a shop selling tiny umbrella charms. A poster advertises a one-man show titled Dry in the Eye of the Storm. There's even a child's rhyme chalked on the wall: 1 for drizzle, 2 for sleet, 3 for keeping dry your feet. The umbrella has gone from object of scorn to part of the scenery. Not quite noble. Definitely not glamorous. But accepted. And honestly, that's the funniest part of all. Rain lashes down again the following morning, as if the sky itself is determined to keep testing the city's resolve. You wander toward Whitehall, umbrella in hand, your shoulders braced for the usual glares and mutters. But oddly, the streets are quiet. Not dry quiet. Fewer taunts. Fewer dramatic eye rolls, just the occasional sniff from a passing snob. Progress? Perhaps. Then, something strange catches your eye. Not a caricature, not a duel, but a royal carriage rounding the bend near St. James's Palace. Inside, poised, unreadable, radiant in her practiced indifference, sits Queen Charlotte. And beside her, nestled delicately at her feet, an umbrella. You almost stop breathing. It's not in use, just there. But that's enough. The mere suggestion that the Queen might, at some point, consider holding an umbrella has tectonic social consequences. It's like watching a thundercloud flirt with the sun. You settle up to the palace gossip grapevine, where footmen and chambermaids trade updates faster than any gazette. She used it briefly 2 days ago, whispers a powdered valet. Just a flicker of drizzle at Kew Gardens. Didn't even open it properly. Someone else scoffs. Held it like a fan, if you can believe. Still counts. Mutters a third. The Countess of Alresford fainted when she saw it. Royal endorsement. Even passive, ambiguous, likely accidental, holds the power of divine decree. If the Queen considers umbrellas tolerable, the rest of the upper crust might finally unclench. But not all are pleased. A Lady Witherspoon has written a fiery letter to the Morning Post, lamenting the sad collapse of British fortitude into continental coddling. It includes the phrase, deluge of decadence, 3 times. Quite impressive, linguistically speaking, and yet the mood is undeniably shifting. In Parliament, one MP allegedly whispered, "I wouldn't mind one of those collapsible contraptions, come budget season." His colleague responded, "Just don't get photographed with it." You visit a dressmaker's boutique in Mayfair, where a display features matching umbrella and bonnet sets, inspired by Her Majesty's moment. They're tasteful, understated, terribly expensive. Historians still argue whether Queen Charlotte's rumored use of an umbrella was intentional social engineering or simple practicality, says the seamstress. But let's be honest, intentional or not, it worked. By evening, a theater is staging a play titled The Queen's Canopy, a farce in which the monarch hides from scandal, rain, and an unwanted suitor beneath the same oversized umbrella. The play is dreadful, but the crowd loves it. You leave during the 3rd act, slipping out into a steady drizzle. All around you, people are beginning to behave differently. You count 6 umbrellas in active use, and not just by eccentrics. A young gentleman in a top hat, a governess escorting a child, even a pair of dandies, one of whom opens his with theatrical flair and declares, "For my curls, sir, not my courage." You chuckle. The fear has faded. The jokes are now owned by the users themselves. That night, you pause by the palace again. No one is outside, just a pair of guards and the endless patter of rain. Still, you glance up toward the Queen's window and wonder if, tucked somewhere out of sight, her umbrella waits for its next subtle debut. It doesn't take much. Not a speech, not a proclamation. Just one moment, one nod from above, and centuries of soggy pride begin to shift. Umbrellas, once mocked as foreign, soft, and scandalous, now carry just a hint of royalty. And that changes everything. You wander back into the bustling tangle of Soho, boots clicking across damp cobbles, umbrella swinging at your side like an old friend. It's strange how quickly the landscape has changed. Just weeks ago, your umbrella made you a moving target. Now, it draws only the occasional eye, roll, and more often than not, a knowing nod. But one name keeps surfacing, always with a smirk Hanway. In the taverns, the streets, the ink-stained pages of London's never-ending pamphlet parade, his legacy is complicated. Jonas Hanway, once mocked relentlessly for his umbrella, bearing stubbornness, is now a byword. Not of respect. Not yet. But of something stickier? Mock? Immortality? You pass a group of chimney sweeps sharing a crust of bread and a bottle of something probably illegal. One grins, points to a soggy passerby fumbling with a newfangled folding model, and calls out, "Look at this, little Hanway!" Laughter follows. It's not the only example. A newspaper cartoon shows a soaking drunk in an alley holding a shredded umbrella, muttering, "I'll Hanway home eventually." Another depicts a crocodile under an umbrella, caption dry but diluted. It's unclear why the crocodile. Artistic license, probably. There's even a street song. You catch it in snippets throughout the day. Jonas walked through Thunder's tune. Dry at noon, mocked by moon. Carried sky on sticks of pride, feathered wig, but damp inside. It's catchy and cruel. But it also proves something. Jonas made an impact. Historians still argue whether the term Hanway was meant to vilify or celebrate. Says a nearby pamphleteer, who hands you a copy of the Brawley Bard. Inside are odes to rain, satire, laced eulogies for damp cravats, and an entire section dedicated to Hanwayisms, quotes real and imagined. Your favorite, Hay fought drizzle with dignity, and dignity with drizzle. Even the slang is catching on. Pulling a Hanway now means attempting something unpopular with stubborn flair. A coachman cursing a slick road might say, should have hand-weighed it. It's a verb, a punchline, a weirdly sincere compliment in certain circles. You wander through a bookshop in Holborn and find a whole shelf of Hanway literature. Most of it is mocking, but not all. One slim volume is titled The Man Who Wouldn't Soak. Its tone is quiet, respectful even. You flip through pages of hand-drawn illustrations, Jonas walking through London, and in every kind of weather, umbrella always upright, expression always faintly amused. He looks lonely in most of them. You leave the shop and cross the street, nearly tripping over a street urchin selling Hanway buttons, tiny round pins with miniature umbrellas etched on them.
Good for luck in bad weather,
He cries.
guaranteed to repel judgment.
You buy one. A block later, you spot a tiny tavern chalkboard that reads, "Try our Jonas stew, thick, warm, and slightly wet." The name lives on, not in glory, but in familiarity. The kind that nudges its way into culture whether anyone approves or not. You sit in a cafe near the Thames, stirring a cup of weak coffee, and reflect on how this city treats its rebels. First it laughs, then it heckles, then it rhymes, and finally, it names soup after them. That's legacy in its weirdest, most British form. You realize something then. Jonas never wanted fame. He wanted dry shoulders. Everything else, the mockery, the folklore, the spontaneous poetry, was just drizzle along the way. You step outside into a soft mist. A child runs past you with a paper parasol. A man nearby opens his umbrella with practiced grace. Two women laugh as their matching ones tangle in the wind. A voice calls out as you pass a bakery. Careful.
Sir, bit Hanway out there today.
You smile. And for the first time, you don't flinch at the name. Because deep down, everyone knows what it means. It begins, as most societal shifts do, not with fanfare but with steel. Steel ribs, to be precise. You first notice them in a shop window. Umbrellas that look different. Sleeker. Lighter. Less like collapsing bat wings and more like precision tools. The placard reads Fox Frames. Modern engineering for the modern drizzle. You step inside. The shopkeeper, a chatty fellow with suit on his cuffs, tells you all about Samuel Fox. Bit of a tinkerer, like your pal Osbert. Only richer. Built a frame with steel instead of whalebone. Holds better. Weighs less. Snaps open like clockwork. He clicks one open for you. It's quiet. Confident. You could imagine someone carrying this without shame. Or bruises. You buy one, naturally. Walking through the city with it feels different. No sideways glances. No projectile root vegetables. Just the satisfying shahik of the opening mechanism and the soft pat of approval from the sky. Umbrellas are everywhere now. You count a dozen before breakfast. A postman, a bookseller, a child with one clearly too big for him. At the market, a fishmonger adjusts his umbrella between sales. At the docks, a customs clerk shouts under a green one while scribbling in a ledger. And not just the oddballs and outsiders. No, ordinary people. You watch a cabbie. Yes, a cabbie step off his coach and open one. A passenger gasps. He shrugs. Can't drive if me head's soaked. Can I? The economic tension seems to have eased. Fewer grumbles from drivers. Fewer turf wars. Maybe because people still ride in coaches. Maybe because everyone finally realized that umbrellas don't replace everything. They just help. Even churchgoers have softened. You pass a Sunday crowd with umbrellas neatly stacked in a vestibule bin labeled "Blessed be the Dry." Someone's getting cheeky with the signage. You return to Osbert's alley one last time. He's not there. Instead, a hand-painted sign hangs over the door. Osbert's folding wonders. Now with only occasional collapse. Inside, a younger man greets you. He left for Paris. Said he wanted to test prototypes in heavier wind. Of course he did. You walk through London that evening with your new steel, ribbed umbrella, gliding through mist and music, the city a quiet echo of wet footsteps and flickering gaslights. You pass lovers sharing a canopy, street vendors selling umbrella pies, still unclear. A newsboy hawking a final edition featuring a fashion spread. 10 umbrellas for the tenacious lady. And you realize no one's talking about them anymore. That's the real sign of victory. Umbrellas, once the lightning rod for mockery, economic anxiety, and literal duels are now mundane, normal, boring. They sit in corners, hang on racks, tumble from hands of children chasing dogs. Historians still argue whether the shift was slow acceptance or cultural fatigue. You overhear someone say at a pub. But I say, some ideas just need to be dry long enough to stop being funny. You finish your pent, nod, and step out once more. The rain continues. Of course it does, but you don't notice anymore. It's late now. The city hums low, lulled by the rhythm of rainfall on slate and stone. You walk, umbrella in hand, not because you're making a statement anymore, but because it's simply raining. And that's all it is now. Rain. Not a political commentary. Not a test of masculinity. Not a duel waiting to happen. Just weather. You drift through the old haunts. Covent Garden, where once jeers rang out at every open canopy, now glows with lamplight, and the rustle of umbrellas like petals closing at night. Clerks walk unbothered beneath black domes. A stray poet recites from a dry patch by a newsstand. Even the coachmen wear waterproof capes. Practicality finally defeating pride. You duck into a tiny museum that's just opened. A brief history of staying dry. It's mostly one room. Artifacts include a moldy parasol, one of Osbert's folding nightmares, mounted like a fossil, and a display labeled Hanway's Mockery's Eye, cartoons from the wet years. You laugh softly at one titled Dandy Drowner vs. Coachman Fury. In a corner, a modest placard reads, Joan Eslaw, 1786, philanthropist, writer, traveler, umbrella enthusiast. Mocked for decades, but dry all the while. You stand there for a long moment. A guide walks by and says, Did you know his name became slang for cowardice, and now it's a brand of umbrellas? You nod. You did know. And somehow, that's perfect. Later, you sit by the Thames. The city glows in patches through the fog, spires softened by mist, windows blinking gold. Your umbrella rests beside you idle. The rain has slackened to a whisper. A boy walks past with one balanced on his shoulder like a sword. His sister skips alongside, hers open even though the rain has stopped. No one shouts. No one scoffs. The world didn't erupt into applause the day umbrellas became normal. No fanfare. No parades. No speeches from Parliament. Just slow, damp perseverance. And when people finally stop caring, that's when the umbrella truly won. Not with thunder, but with drips. So now, as the city dims around you, and the puddles still reflect candlelight, and boot, heels, you ease into the quiet of acceptance. The storm is never fully gone, but neither is the panic that used to come with it. Rain is just part of things now. And umbrellas, those little arcs of fabric and stubbornness, have nestled into the rhythm of it all. You walk slower now. Each droplet on your sleeve feels like punctuation. The kind that ends an old sentence and starts a new one. Where once an umbrella made you a spectacle, it now makes you invisible. And oddly, that's the triumph. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the hush of rain above, the soft ticking of water against rooftops, the rustle of canvas folding down in the night. In the distance, church bells toll not in judgment, but in rhythm. The old men have stopped shouting, the pamphlets have yellowed, the duels have dried up, and yet the city goes on. You sit now, still beneath your canopy, calm beneath your shield, and feel the hush settle over everything. It's not rebellion. Not anymore. It's comfort. And as your eyes grow heavier, remember, sometimes the simplest revolutions don't march or shout or burn. Sometimes they just open quietly. And stay open long enough to change the weather.